They call me Prophet. And I'm the only one who knows what's coming. Cell are not the real threat to our world. The most powerful alien, the Alpha Ceph, still lives.
Crysis 3, or as some people like to call it, the interactive tech demo or interactive benchmark, is one of those game franchises that sums up the modern age of gaming. Every time a new one is announced, people get really excited and want to see how it looks, with very little interest in the gameplay or the story. And that's basically all the Crysis games have become. All flash with very little substance. Crysis 3, actually the fourth game in the series if we count Crysis Warhead, is also very guilty of this. Let's start off with a little background on the game. It's set in New York, just like Crysis 2, but it's been 24 years since the events of Crysis 2 took place. Cell have taken over as a provider of free energy and have encapsulated New York in a giant dome, almost like a greenhouse of sorts, and apparently every civilian is in debt. But it's never really made apparent just why exactly Cell have put a giant bubble around New York. Or maybe it's said in the game, and I just didn't listen because I never felt compelled to. And that pretty much sums up Crysis 3. A lot is said, a lot of it is very big and very dramatic, but you never really feel like you should be listening to it or that it really matters.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
Come on, Psycho, let's move!
Show me your face. You cut me out my fucking suit, now show me your face!
Psycho, let's go!
You assume the role of Prophet, still sporting that trendy nanosuit like it was a bloody James Bond tuxedo, and he's been out of action for quite some time. He comes back to warn everyone about the end of the world foretold to him in a vision by the leader of the alien race in the game. And this is likely a poor attempt at trying to force the name Prophet to actually have some meaning this time. You are freed by your old buddy Psycho, who has an alliance with the rebels against Cell, and the two of you hop on your way to save humanity. I may have been a bit too harsh on Crysis 2 when it launched, because so much had changed from Crysis 1, and most of it I felt for the worst. But it wasn't until playing Crysis 3 that I realized Crysis 2 was actually pretty well made and not a bad game at all. One reason being that the characters never overstepped their bounds. Well, maybe Lockhart did a bit, but they all had their moment, and even the protagonist was quiet and just a cipher to get you through the narrative. This time though, in Crysis 3, because we are back at Prophet, it means that we have to listen to him ramble on and fucking on, where every second sentence has him muttering the term, the Alpha Ceph.
The Alpha Ceph.
And believe me, it gets damn annoying after a while. Not only is Prophet a bad character who lacks any emotion or soul, but that can be applied to all the characters that make up the cast of Crysis 3. Not one character is likable or worth giving a damn about. Even the quirky, foul-mouthed Psycho has changed so much, they might as well have just gave us a new character. He's no longer genuinely funny, and most of what he says is like what a 14-year-old would say to their mother when they're not allowed to go to the junior disco with all their friends. He constantly says words like prick or bollocks to try and force some sort of juvenile humor into the narrative, but it comes off as crude and out of place, especially when you actually listen to how many times he swears in the game.
Yeah, you want a hand?
No. Piss off.
Now, I'm not against swearing in games. Sometimes it has its place, sometimes it doesn't. I swear all the time myself in day-to-day speech, but this is just over the top, and it makes you dislike the character of Psycho instead of the intended effect that it's supposed to have. Instead of the funny, crazy sort of guy that he was before, hence why he got the name Psycho, he's reduced to this pitiful man who goes on and on about how his precious nanosuit was taken away from him, and how he's gonna kill whoever did it. He's supposed to be the emotional anchor in the game, and I get the direction that they try to go in, having him wish he had the nanosuit back, and Prophet wishing that he could get rid of his because of all the sacrifices that he's had to make because of it. But Crytek really need to hire some actual writers who can do proper dialogue for characters. The emotion just isn't there, and you never once care about any of the characters. Along with our couple of heroes are a bunch of really minor characters, one of them being Karl Ernst Rasch. He's the guy who created the nanosuits in the first place, and he's really sort of off. He's really creepy looking. He has a really svelte face with really protruding jawbones and really creepy big eyes. And he kind of talks in riddles, and he's a bit overdramatic and over the top at times.
I designed your suit, my dear fellow, of course. It can't get a read on me.
Then we have Claire, who is Psycho's love interest and sort of the leader of the rebels fighting back against Cell. She is also quite possibly one of the worst characters I've ever seen in a big budget video game. Her dialogue is horrendous and involves a lot of big fake words to make her sound like she knows what she's doing. But not only that, she's terribly acted too. Whoever did the voice for her missed the mark totally, and all the dialogue comes off as dumb melodrama that's completely overacted.
Look at the modifications, Michael! Is it Seth? Cell? Is it even human?
And I found it hard to care about anything she was saying. Well, that for the parts that I actually listened to. And that's part of the problem with the characters in Crysis 3. I never cared what any of them were saying or what any of them believed in. I didn't even really understand half the story because I wasn't listening to the characters because they were so boring to listen to. I just wanted them to shut up so I could get back to playing the game, hiding in bushes all cloak style and skewering heads together with my arrows. The story takes itself far too seriously, and more often than not, those are the stories that suck the most in games. One last note about the characters is that there's no protagonist versus antagonist feeling in the game. You kill dozens of Cell soldiers because you're told to, and they stand in your way, but there's never really a reason. There's no big bad head of the Cell Corporation to act against, and they don't really have a leader. There's no enemy to hate or motivate you towards killing at the end. You just do all these things because the characters in the game tell you to, and it falls very flat at times. Okay, on to visuals. Might as well get them out of the way while we're at it. As everyone knows, Crytek have some of the best technical wizardry skills in the business, if not the best. What they can squeeze out of their engine and out of hardware is nothing short of magic, and Crysis 3 is a huge testament to that. This game, on PC anyway, is the best looking game I have ever seen to date. No other game comes close to what is on display here. And it's not just because of the enormous scale, I'll actually get to that in a minute, but it's also because of the insane attention to detail, and all the little tiny things add up to a very immersive visual feast. Environments are extremely dense with detail. From rubble, signs, vegetation, vehicles, particles, and water scattered throughout the environment. Everywhere you look has so much detail packed into your field of view that it's impossible to not stop and just look around while playing the game. The main attraction this time is grass. It's being hyped by everyone as looking really, really good, and I would have to agree. It's without doubt the best looking grass or vegetation I have ever seen in a game. I thought Far Cry 3 was impressive at the time, but this walks all over it. The water is also some of the best you will ever see. Every single thing that hits the water creates a ripple, and each ripple creates a shimmering band of light across the environment, illuminating walls and even individual blades of grass. This can look incredible indoors or tunnels where the shimmers of light light up the entire area. Not only that, but the water also has real dynamic reflections that change based on where you're looking at and where you're standing, and sometimes it can be breathtaking. The attention to detail is so insane that even scopes on guns reflect a tiny version of the environment through it. So whatever the scope is actually facing, you can see a small, tiny version inside the scope when you're looking around. And this is something that I've always wanted in FPS games. It's not really a big thing, but it adds so much depth to the image, and it really makes it a lot more dynamic and immersive. Another impressive aspect of the visuals are character models. They may not be the prettiest looking people that are being rendered, but my god, Psycho has never looked so detailed. The faces are like something you would see in a tech demo, and they really do look like real people, especially the eyes. Sadly, the rest of the character models, like their clothes, are much lower res, and clash with the high detail of the faces, so it can be a bit jarring to look from one to the other.
It's dead now.
Now, getting back to it, let's talk about the scale of the game. More specifically, I'll talk about one level in the game which has the giant dam in it. This is freaking huge. You start off way above the dam, looking down on it, and you can even see little enemies wandering about on top of it. Then you go down below the dam and take out a lot of dudes and skulk around there for a bit below all the skyscrapers. You then proceed to the dam level itself and kill all the dudes that you were able to spot so tiny from a mile away before. Then you go inside the dam and blow it up, sending water everywhere in the level that you visited before that. This is immense scale, and it's not sparse either. The environments still have that huge attention to detail, and it all happens without even one loading screen or even a hiccup in the performance. It's truly awe-inspiring and without doubt one of the best levels in the game. On the performance side, the game runs pretty well. In more chaotic environments, the frames can really drop, like the first level where it has lots of rain coming down, or the grassy level where all the explosions and wind effects are happening. But for the most part, I'd say it runs better than Crysis 2, or even on par with it, but the visual trade-off is also a lot better. The stuff on screen feels like it should cost a lot of frames to run, unlike some games which look okay but also run like shit. For anyone unfamiliar with my setup, I run an Asus GTX 670 with an Intel i5 3570K and 8GB of RAM, and I average in about the high 30s to the high 40s most of the game. It can go way higher and way lower depending on where I am in the game, but I'd say roughly 35 to 45 is where it hangs. And this is running at max settings at 1080p. Now let's get into gameplay. For the most part, it's largely unchanged to what was in Crysis 2. You still have one button for armor and one button for cloak, but this time sprinting isn't attached to your energy meter. And thank fuck for that. Of course, the big thing is the new bow, which I will admit is pretty cool, but it also makes the game entirely too easy. You fire it and it's a one-shot kill, and you never come out of cloak for shooting people with it. Not only that, but you can change the arrowheads to explosives or electric ones to take out more than one guy at a time. It makes you feel incredibly overpowered, and that can be both a good thing and a bad thing depending on how you look at it.
A bow?
Yeah, makes you an invisible silent kill machine. Serious kit this. You like it?
No.
There is a new upgrade system in the game for your nanosuit, but it's largely just aesthetic. It works pretty much the same as what it did in Crysis 2, except you don't get energy from Fallen Ceph anymore and build it up and then unlock stuff that way. You pick up briefcase style objects that give you one unlock point. There's only one point in the game where you're actually forced to pick up one of these briefcase style objects, and the rest of the nanosuit points that you have to get, you really have to search the environment for them. Now, one thing I fucking hate in Crysis 3 is the new hacking mechanic. At first it seemed kinda cool, but holy Jesus does it get annoying. Basically, you go up to things and you can press F to hack them, and a little minigame pops up where you have to align a little node in between like brackets. And you can either do it by going up to the object, or you can do it from afar. But there are times when you just have to hack everything, from doors to weapon crates to turrets to even some enemies, and they constantly force it upon you too. Listen, Crytek, I know you're proud of your new mechanic, but knock it the fuck off. It's annoying. There are times when you can enter some environments, and there are about 2 turrets in the whole environment, but just hacking those 2 turrets can kill all the enemies in the area, and it makes the game just way too easy. That's one of the largest complaints from gamers with Crysis 3, is that the game is just way too easy, even on the hardest difficulty. The game later forces you into the obligatory Crysis vehicle levels, and these should never have been allowed into the game. Controlling the little dune buggy that you get later on is spotty at best, and you become incredibly exposed, and the enemies can kill you far too quickly. The objectives are also very vague in these sections, leading you to just drive around in circles, avoiding fire, wondering where the hell you have to go next. There's also a VTOL level later in the game where you shoot gunships as Psycho flies around, and it's like having your teeth pulled out through your ass. The camera constantly jerks the opposite direction of where you're supposed to be shooting, and you miss more targets than you can hit. It just felt like a very badly designed level, and it became very frustrating to try and finish. In fact, that happens a lot in the later levels. Crytek make the levels much larger and more open, but the level design just goes out the window. You never really know if you're actually going the right way, and the big areas serve no purpose but to look cool. You still tackle all the objectives the exact same way until you're funneled back into a corridor again. Touching briefly on sound, it's pretty much the same as Crysis 2. Guns all sound the same except for a few of the new alien weapons, which actually sound pretty nice. And the suit sounds are all the same, such as the deep bass of armor mode, and the signature rough robotic voice of changing in and out of different states. Even the enemies all sound the same. They all have similar voices to Crysis 2, and they all have the same enemy callouts. Overall, it sounds nice, but nothing really new or worth writing home about. Let's talk a little bit about multiplayer. The multiplayer for me may be what saves this game from being a total rent experience. The single player, while it has its moments, is largely forgettable, and not nearly worth the price of admission on its own, like its predecessors. But the multiplayer has come a long way, and is actually really enjoyable this time around. I never really liked the multiplayer of Crysis 2, and while a lot is unchanged mechanics-wise, it's just a lot more fun in this iteration for some reason. It feels faster and more energetic. Perks are all pretty much the same, except for the new newbie perk called Auto Armor that saves far too many people who don't know how to manage their suit energy properly. The game can also be a little laggy at times, and the netcode can be total ass, especially when you see kill cams and how some guys' arrows magically go through objects or seem to have an auto-aim effect attached to them. But after you apply some mouse acceleration fixes and lower all the graphic settings so you can get really high frames all the time, it can be quite a fun experience. I'm not going to go into detail on the modes or anything like that, because I have some other videos up on my channel showing the multiplayer side of things, and this review is mainly for the single player aspect. Overall, Crysis 3 is a good game, but it's extremely lacking in certain areas. It's criminally short, and out of the very quick 6-hour campaign, only about 2 to 3 hours of it are actually worth remembering. Later levels are a bit crap, and the art style seems to trail off. It feels like they spent a lot of time on some levels and then almost nothing on some of the others. I was expecting a pretty lackluster campaign anyway, and the only really reason that I bought the game was to see how good it looked maxed out, and I imagine a lot of other people did similarly. Bottom line is, if you're thinking about getting this game just for the single player only, I would wait until it's a good bit cheaper in a sale or something, and then get it. If you think you'll enjoy the multiplayer, then go for it, because it can add a lot of value to the purchase and really extend the life of the game. It's nowhere near the game Crysis 1, Warhead, or even Crysis 2 were, and I think it may be time for Crytek to let the series rest for a while and move on to different things. I think if a Crysis 4 came out too soon, it would completely fatigue the franchise and ultimately work against it. And that is it for this review. I've covered, I think, all the points that I wanted to get across. There are probably some things that I'm missing, but overall, it seems like I hit every one of them. If you guys want to see me do reviews of some other games, please leave a suggestion in the comments section and I will try and get to it when I can. The next video that I'm hoping to do, next video review, will likely be BioShock Infinite when it releases. When that game comes, I'm just gonna lock down and play that game straight from start to finish as much as possible and really try and just hammer it out all in one experience if I can. And then I might do a review of that because I think that game is going to be something really special and something really worth talking about. But if there are any others that you want to see, let me know and I will do them in the meantime. So thanks for watching, guys. Please rate the video, like, dislike. If you dislike the video, please let me know why in the comments and I will try and take it on board and improve my videos for next time. If you also like the video, tell me why, what you did like about it so I can improve on those too. And if you want to see some more reviews or any more gameplay videos, please subscribe to my channel and I will see you all in the next video.
Well, I don't know about you, but I call that fucking flawless.